Hi, today we're going to have a look at the mixing of all of them. So if you haven't heard the track yet, all of them, I'll take you up for a ride. Please don't tell me. This track is on my album Shitgrunk that is on Bandcamp. You can download it for, I think I priced it, let's actually have a look. I priced it at €3. There's 8 tracks on the album. I think this one is the most poppy track. The other ones are more atmosphere tracks. And there's a few tracks with actual beats in them, and there's one more track with singing, albeit more metal screaming. So if you're curious, head over to Bandcamp. I'll put some information somewhere around here and also in the description box. I recorded originally just these 2 tracks here in yellow. These are straight from the system. Usually I record drums on a stereo track. Well, unless there's no stereo information, then I record it in mono. And that's exactly what I did here. You can see the mod drums, the modular drums are in mono. And the synths are recorded on another separate stereo track called mod synths, which you can see here. Since this was a track that I added vocals to, I also spent some time adding a little bit, well, a few risers and some crash cymbals here, which I named risers and crash here. And I also, of course, added the vocals. I'll first show you how I mixed those 2 tracks, these 2 tracks here, the original recordings, because 99% of the times you see a video of me on YouTube, I'm just working with these 2 tracks. I don't have anything else added. Usually it's just the recording from the modular straight into Ableton. I just mix it and then I render it, and then, well, in Final Cut Pro, add it to the video, and then that's it. So if you're coming from the modular realm, I think that first bit will be the most interesting. But I will look at the other tracks, the vocals in particular, well, just to be complete. Let's first have a listen to a part of the track here. All of them are gonna break down and cry. All of them are gonna sit down and lie. All of them are gonna make up and try. You better watch out because they'll take you up. So let's now listen to this track without anything that I added afterwards, so just the original recordings. Let's take out all the effects as well. So this is how I recorded it straight from the modular without any effects or processing. There is always a little bit of sidechain compression coming from my DBX 1066, but that's printed immediately, so that's what I'm working with. I'm not sure if you already can hear it, but we're listening to too much bass. In general, the bass is very boomy. Well, there's just too much of it and it's very undefined. So that's something that I will have to fix later in the mix. Now, the first thing that I usually do is throw on an EQ8, which is just the Ableton stock plugin for equalizing. I throw it on the drums, just so I can visually analyze, or just see really just so I can see where the punch of the kick drum is. And apparently, I think I was using Crater for this jam, and I've noticed anytime that I dial in a sound that I really like with Crater, it's pitched a little bit higher than a usual kick drum. But anyway, you can see the punch is, well, around 200 Hertz here. But of course, there's a little bit of punch at 100 as well. And then the tail end, which comes later, is lower in frequency, but I cut out everything below 30 Hertz anyway. So after I've seen where the punch of the kick drum is, usually I go straight into the synth recording and I make a dip. Here I made a giant dip, probably because there's so much bass in this track already. So I make a dip where the punch of the kick drum lies. So that already fixed part of the bassy, woolly bassy problem. Let's further look at the drums. So after the equalizer, I usually always throw on a DBX 160 plugin with some gentle compression, really. I usually don't do a lot of compression, and I start off with a compressor that compresses across the whole spectrum, just slightly, so it compresses the highs and the lows and, well, everything in between as well. And then also what I usually do is add another compressor to it that focuses on the high-end content. And with the API 2500, you can set it that it reacts to higher frequencies more. So when a snare or like a loud crash cymbal or anything hits, it will detect more of that and it will compress everything. It's not like it only compresses the high end, but it only reacts when the high end is way too loud. So I use this as a means to tame my snares and claps and whatnot, because I always feel when I record it straight from the modular, I always feel the claps and the snares are way too loud. Sure, there's... But as you can see, all of this is really subtle. There's not a lot going on here. There's also this decapitator on the drums, which adds some saturation, some grit, some distortion, if you will. But again, it's, well, in this particular track, it's really subtle. You can go completely over the top with this plugin. I left it on a very gentle setting here. It also helps to compress the sound a little bit more because it rounds off the sharp transients. So it helps everything, well, be at the same level a little bit more. So that's the drums. Let's listen to them together with the synths. And well, I hope you notice that there's still some buildup in the low frequencies that I really don't like very much. So let's solo the synths and let's see what I can do here. And well, I've noticed this before when I threw on EQ8 here, but you can see these giant peaks here in the bass. These are, well, bass is usually louder than the other frequency content, but it's just too much. You can see it here. It's really overpowering. I think you already saw this, but this is around, it's somewhere between 50 and 60 hertz that this really obtrusive boominess is. So I made a little dip in the drum section where that peak is, just to, well, create a little bit more space, because there's a lot of frequencies in the kick drum in that range as well. This doesn't solve the issue, but it, well, mixing is all about gentle nudges and little adjustments to get everything sound right, because sometimes you start with a recording that you simply cannot fix, because big changes are usually not what you're going after when you're mixing a track. I don't think you can save a track that's completely recorded terribly. So the bass issue is not yet solved. I threw on like a dynamic equalizer. Nova is a free plugin by TDR Tokyo. I've tried to pronounce this brand name already. It's by a brand named Tokyo DAW Labs, but for some reason they use TDR for short, which is much easier for me to pronounce. So I use this plugin a lot. Because it's very, very versatile. You can use it as a mid-side processor, you can use it as a multi-band compressor, or just as an equalizer, or all these things together. So it's really, really, really versatile. And it's free, and it's really good. So if you need anything like this, give it a try. So I made more adjustments to the bass here. As you can see, there's some dynamic processing going on here, mainly around the 200 hertz, because, well, it's all very boomy, and usually the mid-range is the thing that makes sound well, muddy. You'd be surprised how low 200 hertz can sound, so this will surely help in reducing the bass problem. So maybe I should deselect everything here. So let's have a listen with and without this plugin. Let's choose a section here. Now let's turn it on. Let's add the drums. Let's remove this plugin. It's okay if you cannot hear it. I'm listening at very low volumes because I'm using a lav mic here. But at louder volumes, or with headphones preferably, this should be really noticeable. Anyway, then I added Elliptical, which is another plugin by TDR. I'm using the free or demo version, which means I cannot change, well, it doesn't save the changes I make, so I just use it in the default setting. What this plugin does is help me get rid of the low end in the side signal. So when you have a stereo track, usually you think of this as a left and a right channel with differences between them. And this is what makes something sound stereo, right? So the differences between left and right. You can also process this differently by just looking at the things that sound similar, so the mid channel, and then the things that sound different, which becomes the side channel. And then you have these two channels that you can process separately, which can be very useful when you're mixing. You can also really destroy your mix when you turn up the side signal too much, because you can get phase problems and whatnot. So don't turn up the side channel too much when you venture into this interesting world of mid-side processing. So anyway, what this plugin Elliptical is doing for me, it's throwing away a lot of the low-end content of the side channel, which we generally don't need. You might say, hey, does it hurt you to keep it in? No, it doesn't hurt me, but it just well, overpowers the compressors and the limiter at the end. So it's good to throw away all the bass content that's excessive, and since there's so much bass in this track, I think it was a good idea to add Elliptical to it. Then I did what I usually do, throw in a DBX 160 to compress the whole signal like equally. Please notice there's like a 2:1 compression ratio, so it's even a little bit less. That's a really low compression ratio. We're not getting, well, maybe we're getting 3 dB of compression, maybe 5 at most. But that's all because of the booming bass. And that's one of the reasons that I throw on this compressor to, once again, try to flatten those bassy peaks a little bit. Not too much, because, well, you will destroy the sound if you compress these bass notes too much. But, well, a few, it's better to add a few compressors that do a little bit every time, than to add one compressor that does a lot. So after the DBX, I usually throw on an API 2500 that takes care of the high end. As you can see here, the loud is selected. The naming of this plugin is a little bit weird, but loud means that the high frequencies are analyzed more. Well, they are louder in the analyzer, so the plugin picks up more of those high frequencies. I also turned this link knob to the left here, which means the left and the right signal are processed independently, which helps us to keep the stereo image. I'm not doing this for the first compressor because I look at this as the first one is my bass compressor, and the bass is usually best in mono, and that's what I used Elliptical for, to make it more mono, to reduce the side channel. So the bass compressor is okay to be mono or stereo linked, and then the compressor for the high end, I always, well, when I don't forget, unlink the left and the right channels. let's have a look at what I did then. So apparently I added another API 2500, probably because I was getting too much peaks still. My mixing process is not always very structured, so sometimes I end up with several instances of the same plugin. And I keep them in because, well, I tune them so everything sounds right, but sometimes it's a little bit ridiculous, really. So then there's another Nova. Should turn it on. So this one is doing dynamics processing here around that, well, around the spot where the bass was really boomy. Well, it's taking care of a lot of those boomy frequencies anyway. And then I added another compressor with a little dip around the same spot, and then a slight mid cut to make some, well, to take care of the mud in the mix, which is usually around the mid frequencies, like 200, 300, 400 Hertz. That's everything that I did with these two tracks. Let's listen to them together again. Now let's have a quick listen to what I did here with the crash cymbal. So as you can hear, this is really subtle. I don't like to have things very loud and over the top when I add them later. It feels a little bit like cheating. And at this part there's like this reversed crash used as a riser. Don't have a lot to say about those. There's no equalizing or any other processing on it. So that's well, that's the whole music track. Then there's the vocals that we still have to have a look at. Maybe let's first have a look at the vocal line here, because it fits so well in with. Please don't tell me that you're sorry, and then just so this one. Can't I make you stay? We've never been apart. I have a few send effects on this track. One is just a very small room reverb for my drums. I always high pass everything before sending it into like a send reverb. And then there's this ping pong delay. There's a sidechain compressor on here that ducks the level whenever the vocal is actually present. And this ensures that the delay is not overpowering the lyric while it's being played. The delay swells in volume after the vocal has stopped. And this is a really interesting effect that's being used a lot in pop records.
Please don't tell me that you're sorry. And then just
I also added some plate reverb by Universal Audio.
why can't I make
Let's
you
listen to this delay by itself. I think you'll agree this is all really very subtle, even though in the mix it sounds like there's a lot of things happening. It's really not.
Please don't tell me that you're
Let's remove all the effects here.
to walk away. Please don't tell me that you're sorry.
Let me remove the auto-tune for a moment as well.
Please don't tell me that you're sorry and then just walk away.
As you can hear, the singing is really, really, really all over the place.
We've never been apart.
But, well, with some auto-tune, and I'm using the Melda Audio M Auto Pitch, which is just great. And there's this form and shift feature on it, which makes the vocals sound like slowed down. Really, you can go the other way as well. There's also a width control.
I hope we'll be okay.
I really like this plugin. It's free and it works perfect for what I needed to do. Then there is an equalizer and then an OTT, which is over the top multiband compressing. This does a lot to the sound. It's a really cool thing to add to certain sounds. I know there's a dedicated plugin sold that's called OTT, but well, if you have a multiband compressor, you can set it up yourself. And well, in Ableton there's even a preset, always preloaded when you install Ableton.
Please don't tell me that you're
The difference this makes is just giant.
just to walk away.
Let's remove it.
The end of our song.
I mean, that's day and night, right?
Can't I make you stay? We've never been apart.
Yeah.
How did
So even though I said I don't think you can save a mix, I do think you can save a vocal, and that's exactly what happened here. Let's have a listen at these harmonies. I didn't do a lot to these, except for some compression to get the levels to be flat, because this is really very much a background thing. And I wanted the levels to be somewhat consistent, also because my singing was, well, all over the place anyway. Then there's the similar kind of equalizer, and there's also sidechain with the drums or the kick drum as a source. Let's remove the auto-tune. I think this is much more okay than the other vocal. With the auto-tune, well, it sounds a lot more processed, which it is. It's immediately a perfect choral voice. You can see that I also panned one voice to the left, one to the right, one I kept in the center. This of course helps create width in this passage of the song, especially when I add the vocal, which is pretty much centered.
Please don't tell me that you're sorry and then just walk away. The end of our sorrow. Why can't I make you stay? We've never been apart.
Anyway, let's listen to the raps now. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So there's the main raps, which I called front here.
Ik kom toch als geroept, wat is er nu? Nu, weer als ik
So these are several layers of the same rap.
ook gestoomd komt voor de bakker. Door en hard weer.
And here and there I just added words and throws
All of them are gonna sit
to
down and lie.
what I
All of them are gonna make up and try. You better watch out because they'll take you out for a ride.
So there's the ones at the front.
Ik kom toch als geroept, wat is er nu? Nu, weer als ik hier ben, is niet genoeg. Ik kan nog wel inschatten, overkookt.
There's some compression on these vocals, this tube compression, because I wanted everything to sound a little bit gritty.
All of them are gonna sit down and lie.
I think all of these are pretty much the same. There's some equalizer on this. And then the back vocals are pretty similar. I did some panning on these voices as well, which you can see here. Look at all the orange tracks here. So there's ones in the center, and then there's a few panned barely left and right, and then a few panned hard left and right. And this makes for almost like a group singing these lyrics, while it's just me sitting here behind my computer.
All of them are gonna break down and cry. All of them are gonna sit down and lie. All of them are gonna make up and try. You better watch out because they'll take you out for a ride.
I grouped all the instrumental tracks together to create kind of a mix, but that's separate from the vocals. On this mix bus I added the plugins or processors that I usually add to my master bus when there's no vocals, but I did it this way this time. Let's listen to this in solo. Let's remove all of this. So this is without any processors. I added a decapitator to add some overall saturation or even grit to this song. Again, it's not doing a lot. You can go completely over the top, which I didn't want to. Then there's this Pultec clone by Universal Audio. What I use this for is to create a nice round sounding bass by adding some bass and attenuating the bass at the same frequencies here, which is like a famous Pultec trick. You boost the low end a little bit, but you also cut out the portion right above the bass, which makes everything sound a lot smoother and rounder, which is something that I really much liked on this track. Let's listen to it without. And then with. Without. And with. Yeah. Then there's this UAD capital mastering compressor. I use this mainly for the saturator. You can see by the VU meters here, there's a little bit of compression happening, not a lot. This is a mastering compressor, so I usually keep it at, well, more at the end of the chain. But if you listen to it without the saturation, let's disengage the saturation. You should notice a subtle difference there as well. Let's add in the saturation. By the way, this is set to mid-side processing. So it's compressing the center, the mono part of the signal a little bit, well, it's just compressing that a little bit. The side information, which you can see here on the right, it's not getting any compression, which means that, well, overall the side is boosted a little bit in relation to the mid signal, which makes everything sound more open, at least if you do it this way. Then there's one more API 2500 that I use as a glue compressor, which means long attack, short release, and a low ratio. This is just as a glue compressor at the end of my mix. And that's it for the mix bus. The only thing that I added to this is final limiter. Usually I don't use too much limiting. I keep the limiting limited. I usually don't limit anything more than, well, 3 to 6 dB at most. Try to keep it below 3 really. And then I set my ceiling to -6 dB as well, which for me works with YouTube, etc. To be loud enough without being obnoxiously loud when you play it in between other videos, etc. This is going to be it for this video. I'm sure editing will take a few hours already, which is always the case with these kind of videos. So please leave a nice comment in the comment section. I hope you liked the video. If you didn't like the video, maybe don't leave a comment. Maybe that's better. I hope you learned something. See you next time. Bye.
Ik weet niet wat gezegd. Niets dat ik doe is slecht. Wel, ik heb het toch verteld en van de ha. Niet grappig, echt niet lachen, het is een schande.